You're listening to the Mark Petroni radio program, heard exclusively on News Talk Saga 960.
We're back with more on News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this Tuesday edition of the Mark Petroni Show. Miles Christen joining us from Wisconsin. Miles is a longtime political watcher, observer, and commentator, and not a big fan of America going to war again. And so when President Joe Biden announced that there are troops headed to Europe, apparently going there not to fight in Ukraine, but to defend allies, therein lies the distinction. Biden's remarks came during the first State of the Union address delivered to him by a joint session of Congress and Capitol. In actual fact, this is what Joe Biden actually said.
Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine.
Right.
Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine.
Well, he's right. He's not going there to fight Ukraine. He also referred to the people of Ukraine as Iranians at one time. But anyway, that's all beside the point. You're a little concerned right now because of the fact that additional troops are headed over there, and you think it's the start of something bad, Miles?
Yeah, I think it's got some very bad possibilities. I mean, we can only hope that Ukraine and Russia come to some sort of ceasefire very, very quickly. But, you got to also wonder, there were probably a lot of reasons that went into why we pulled out of Afghanistan. And, one of them could be that we pulled out of Afghanistan so that we could be involved in other conflicts, All
right. So you think that Biden wants war? It seems that he's talking like a guy who wants war, talking tough. On one hand, he's the guy who doesn't want these types of conflicts, as he stated during the State of the Union address. But now, all of a sudden, things have changed. Do you feel that there's been a sense in the administration that war with Russia is inevitable?
No, I don't think it's inevitable, but this sort of battle where, even if we are directly funding and supporting the people of Ukraine, there have been other situations where, we're fighting, or we're supporting this group of, say, terrorists in Syria, and a country like Russia may have been supporting another group of, rebels or terrorists in a place like Syria. We've had battles like that for a while now, especially, when you think of the full context of Korea and Vietnam and who was funding what group and so forth. I don't know if war is inevitable, but I also think back to, 20 years ago, 22, 23 years ago, when the Project for a New American Century got together, and the PNAC, and these are the guys who basically envisioned 9/11 happening, and they talked about all these sorts of things they wanted. Essentially they wanted a new, and they said, this is the process, the transformation of change is likely to be a long one, absent a catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. I think I paraphrased that pretty correctly. And after 9/11 happened, they got all the things that they wanted, everything that they wrote about, increasing military funding, getting troops into particular countries, all of the sort of things that the Project for a New American Century had wanted 20 years ago has come true. And there are a lot of people in the United States government that ever since the end of the Cold War wanted to restart it and wanted this big conflict with Russia. And here we are now 20 years later, and you've got these neoconservatives and these hawks and so forth that are there in Washington. It's I'm not a Trump guy, but as Trump called them, the swamp and everything. And there's a lot of truth to that there's this like permanent class of people involved in Washington politics, these lobbyists who operate things from, the shadows. And I think there's a lot of people who supported Kamala Harris who are very pro-war. And Biden, I don't think he knows anything. I think he gets carted out there. He doesn't know what's going on. He just basically gets told, go out there, say this. You're only supposed to answer on, take questions from these journalists. You're only supposed to call on these people. I mean, Biden really is a puppet.
A puppet of whom?
Say again?
A puppet of whom? If he's the puppet, who's the puppet master?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I remember a few months ago, I can't remember the exact name of the group, but there is actually like consulting firms that have, many, many members of the administration all belong to the same consulting firms. I mean, there's a lot of, think tanks that probably have huge power over the administration.
Meantime, there's also the threat that Putin could go nuclear. Russia is thought to have around 2,000 tactical nuclear weapons. And with a guy like Putin, who has threatened that push come to shove, he would go nuclear over this, depending on how wide the conflict goes. I mean, if it goes beyond Ukraine, then who knows? Is that a concern out your way in Wisconsin amongst your circle of friends and contacts?
I mean, I know a lot of I have a lot of immigrant friends, and who I know people from both Ukraine and Russia, and a lot of people and people in different areas of Europe. I think they're all just kind of have a similar sentiment of concern for what's going on there right now, and the thought of nuclear war might even be just a little hard for people to even go there. I mean, it is a real, actual possibility, but I'd have to hope that the economic interests of Russia, and even of Putin for that matter, would prevent them from escalating this further than it's already gone.
There's this story. Russia claims that Ukraine is building a dirty bomb. Ukraine building dirty bomb. This is according to the Russian administration. And I mean, could that be used as a pretext for pushing the button? I mean, something like that could be pretty scary, right?
Oh, I mean, what's really, really scary is you think about this situation where the United States and Russia are at odds, and then you've got other countries that don't like probably either of these countries, and there are other countries that could create a false flag scenario and create a situation where the two, United States and Russia, or United States, Russia in some sort of way, go into an even bigger battle. It's a bad situation, and like I always have to start with I'm not a Trump fan, but the thing about Trump that's so crazy is that he probably could have gotten some sort of peace treaties accomplished with Putin. He probably could have gotten some sort of trade agreements and peace agreements, maybe even nuclear disarmament on some level, an agreed nuclear disarmament on some sort of reduction, some sort of level, but he wasn't able to do anything on that level because of the BS Russiagate situation.
Yeah, the BS is right. I mean, you supported Biden, I think somewhat reluctantly, but any regrets about that?
That's a good question. I mean, I voted for him only based on the COVID situation, and honestly, he hasn't done that great of a job on dealing with COVID. I've said many times I think Trump did a bad job with COVID, and it's like at the same time it's like, so Biden's worse on war policies and could easily get us into not just Russia Ukraine conflict. I mean, I could easily see Biden getting us in another war in the Middle East. And I mean, the way he pulled out of Afghanistan was bad. We're still in Iraq. People don't talk about that at all. Granted, not many people are getting hurt there, but there's still 2 dozen soldiers been dying there, every year. And we don't know how many mercenaries are there and all that situation. But, yes, I do have certain particular regrets about Biden. That's not to say I would have voted for Trump. And 2020 was kind of a train wreck in many ways because the third and fourth party candidates were honestly a joke. And typically I do support third and fourth party candidates.
Well, I'm getting the sense that some Americans certainly regret voting for Biden. I mean, the guy's polling 35%. So clearly there are some Americans saying this was a bad idea.
Well, 2022, I mean, as far as the congressional and Senate is going to be an epic failure on so many levels for the Democrats. I mean, you've got the inflation and everything just, in the last few months that was bad, the price of everything, the inability to get people to work. And now today, gas is at $4 a gallon in areas in Wisconsin. I see the possibility that this could go up much higher over the next few weeks or a few months. The one of the biggest Senate races people are looking at nationally is this Senate race here in Wisconsin, where Ron Johnson is going up against 20 different there's 20 different Democrats in the primary, and the media is only focusing on 3 or 4 of them, so they're not going to give any coverage to the other 17 candidates because these 3 or 4 people have been pre-selected by the media months before the primary. One of them is the son of a billionaire whose family owns the Milwaukee Bucks. The other ones are Lieutenant Governor who once pushed me for asking him why he voted to give tax dollars to that Bucks arena. Then we've got another woman who's running who's a millionaire, and I mean, it's the whole thing is Senator Ron Johnson's so rich, vote for the millionaire. It's like vote for the millionaire, the son of a billionaire, or the lieutenant governor who avoids media repeatedly. And they're gonna. I very much think Ron Johnson will be reelected in the Wisconsin Senate race, and I think the Republicans are very, very likely to take the House and Senate in November.
Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg was asked about the near record gas prices. Here, let's listen to his response.
Clean transportation can bring significant cost savings for the American people as well. Last month, we announced a $5 billion investment to build out a nationwide electric vehicle charging network so that people from rural to suburban to urban communities can all benefit from the gas savings of driving an EV.
Did you hear that?
I mean, he's just... Pete Buttigieg is... He is... Pete Buttigieg, I don't even know how to describe him. I mean,
he's buy an electric car. I mean, the average cost of an electric vehicle is $55,000. Does that make sense to you? I mean, is that practical?
No. I mean, I do think that electric vehicles and the abundance and the accessibility of electric vehicles is great. However, they're still very expensive, and you're still getting the power a lot of times from coal power plants.
Right.
So it's like we also have to, we're not thinking the problem all the way through. Like getting electric cars is a step in the right direction, but then there's the question of, well, where is the power coming from? And
yeah, and whether you got the electrical grid to be able to provide. I mean, if everybody magically flipped to electric, you wouldn't have the means, the capacity to supply all that electric power to juice all those vehicles.
Clean transportation can bring significant
he
cost
says, this is what he says.
for the American people as well. Last month, we announced a $5 billion investment to build out a nationwide electric vehicle charging network so that people from rural to suburban to urban communities can all benefit.
What's wrong with that?
He's a terrible transportation secretary. I mean, what did he took? How many months did he take for, his
I don't know.
adopting? I mean, maternity leave for an adoption. At the middle of when everything
Well,
was.
that's because he was suffering from postpartum depression. That's my theory on why he had to take so much time. Miles,
Creepy Pete. That's what they call Pete Buttigieg Creepy Pete because he's a creepy. He stares
creepy
the
little
media.
dude.
Like when the media asked him questions in Iowa, and he just smiles like a robot and walks away. And it was like,
Maybe
okay.
he is a robot. Who knows? Miles, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate this.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Miles Kristen coming to us from Wisconsin. And I got to take a quick time out, commercial break. Back with more on News Talk Saga 960 after this.
Stream us live at saga960am.ca.